Tom, thank you so much for coming on to the podcast.
Well, it's a pleasure. It's very nice to meet you, Paul.
Thank you. Are you in Denmark right now?
I am. Yes, I'm in the ancient town of Svendborg, which
Right.
is right in the middle, really. It's a very, very sheltered harbour, and it's been remarkable for these last few days because we've had the remnants of Storm Floris, which absolutely hammered Scotland and then thundered across the North Sea. And it's just sort of hanging around the west coast of Norway, battering us with all sorts of rubbish. And it rains every day, and the wind has been prodigious. And this harbour, it's quite a complex harbour, and it's full of, well, it's not full of traditional boats, but there's a lot of traditional vessels in here. Big Danish galleass ketches, and there's a three-master down the road with a couple of square topsail yards. There's a replica of a Hanseatic trading ship just over the way there. It's a fascinating place, but right now it's absolutely rammed with yachts who are coming in to hide from this storm. It's incredible. They're all piled in here on top of each other practically, and they're swapping fenders and moving lines around. And it's an international scene. We've got Germans, Swedes, Brits, Danes, of course, and the odd Finn thrown in just to keep things lively. And it's so nice because everybody's being so positive, and we've got every reason to be fed up and hacked off because the weather's just been awful this summer, and this really just takes the biscuit this last few days. But you know, everybody's so positive and they're all helping each other and looking out. We're going to have a noggin with next door at 6 o'clock, which is why I've got to go. And I wouldn't let them down for anything. They're such nice people. And there it is. You know, sometimes it's grand to be a sailor, isn't it, Paul?
Oh, absolutely. Most of the time it is. Yeah. Well, where have you been sailing and where are you going on this journey, whatever journey you're on right now?
Well, right now we've just come down from Mariaham in the Åland Islands, which well, I suppose not everybody knows where they are. If you look at, sort of imagine the Baltic Sea, you've got Sweden on the left, on the west side, and on the northeast side you've got Finland. On the southeast side, you've got the Baltic states, Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia. On the south side, you've got Poland and Germany. And then there's this long leg which runs away to the eastwards, at the root of which is what used to be called Leningrad when I went there in 1989, a few months before the Berlin Wall came down, and is now called St. Petersburg. So that's Russia. So that's the place. Now, if you go up to Stockholm, which is sort of halfway up Sweden, Stockholm is utterly surrounded by islands. It is an island, and the islands fan out across the Baltic Sea, and there's a short gap of 20 miles before you get to the Finnish islands, and then you're into the Åland Islands, which bridge the gap across the Baltic to take you down to southern Finland and Russia. And those islands are famous seafaring islands. It was from there that Gustav Ericsson ran his fleet of four-masted barks, which ran the grain home from Australia in the 1930s, and produced some very fine sailing literature into the bargain. And it's great to be there. And in the main harbour at Mariaham, they have the Pommern, which is a full-size, full-on four-master. And to tread her decks and look up at those yards is just, it brings you up with a round turn, Paul. It makes you realise how we're all playing about with our little boats. You know, you see these guys and you think they manned those vessels with probably 16 seamen, many of whom were apprentices. And you look at the length of the yard and you imagine the all hands up there stowing the main course. And they'd be spread out. They wouldn't be cheek by jowl. It's colossal, absolutely huge. And the vessels were remarkable because they're famous now because of the grain run, which of course was basically a downwind run in the Southern Ocean. You went round the Cape of Good Hope, ran down to Australia, and then ran your easting down to the Horn, round the Horn, and back up the Atlantic to Europe. They were built for the Lies line in Hamburg by Germans and Scottish yards mostly. These great big bulletproof sailing ships shipping 3,000-4,000 tons of cargo. made the cutty sark look like a toy. They were huge. And what they did, what they were built for, was to beat round the Horn and go up the west coast of South America to the guano ports, Chile, and load with nitrate, and then bring it back. And imagine beating round the Horn in those vessels. I mean, so often the square riggers in those days, they'd get down to the Horn, bash, 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 not making any ground. The current and the howling gales were against them, and they'd tack and tack right down to the ice and then come back for another go. And there was the Horn again, right on the weather bow. You probably know the feeling if you've tried to tack up to an island in the West Indies. But really, it's always on the weather bow, isn't it? But just imagine that. And they were doing this for weeks. And in the end, some captains just said, well, sod this. And they gave up and they ran right round the world to come up on the other side of South America. But not these Lies Line guys. They bashed it out and the ships were bomb-proof and they got round every time. So these are, anyway, to be on board the Pomone was a bit special. So we went all the way up there to see that. It's many years since we went to Soviet Russia. We were the third yacht into Soviet Russia in 1989.
Wow.
And, that was since the 1917 revolution. That was third yacht since 1917, and we got a great welcome from the Central Yacht Club of Trade Unions.
Oh yeah, what was it like? Can you describe the experience?
Days. Well, it was interesting because, for a start, navigating in the Baltic Islands was pretty exciting, Paul, really, because it's wall-to-wall rocks, many of them sunken, most of them unmarked. Most of them are charted these days, but back in 1988, this is Cold War time, and a lot of them were not charted, and particularly in Finland, as you get close to the Russian border. And so navigating through those islands with no GPS and no plotter in a 1911 gaff rig pilot cutter that drew 8 feet, was with an engine the size of a sort of a buzz box, really, with an egg whisk on the back. Really wasn't much good. And that was it. So the navigation was a bit of a challenge getting up there. Getting the visas to go to Russia was impossible, really, in London. Nobody wanted to know. They didn't want to know about yachts. You could go within tourist and do what you were told if you paid lots of money, but if you wanted to go in your own boat, it was a non-starter. So I had a pal in Helsinki in Finland, and I gave him a call and said, look, what's the chances, can you get us a visa? And he said, I don't know, really, he said, but if you come up here, I'll see what I can do. Because he had some influence. And I said, but it's an awful long way to sail, Max, to just see what you can do. And he said, well, look at it like this. He said, you can come up here. You'll have had a good sail, whether you get the visa or not. It's nice in Finland. You'll enjoy it. And so, well, that seemed fair enough. And so we did. And when we got there, he said, right, he said, I've made some arrangements. And he said, tomorrow, you're going to join me and we're going to walk through town, and we'll end up, and this is how it transpired. We took our passports. There was myself, my wife, my 12-year-old daughter, and a young man who'd sailed across the Atlantic with me on the Battle Axe strip some years before. And he was a tough nut and a great seaman. So he came along. So there's 4 of us in all. And we had to take our passports, and each one had to have $50 in it, $50 US. And we met this man behind a bus shelter in a suburb of Helsinki. And he looked the perfect gangster. He had a trench coat on, and he was all unshaven and a trilby hat pulled down over his eyes. And he was just unbelievably colourful. And he sort of looked us in the eyes and said, give me the passport. When you want to go? So we gave him the dates that would work for us, because we had to be specific about the dates. He said, okay. Now give me the money. So we gave him the money, and he says, be back here 3 days, same time. And he disappeared behind the bus shelter. So that was we're left standing there with no passport. I mean, we did think twice about giving him the passport. An Englishman doesn't give up his passport easily, Paul, as I'm sure.
I know that's dangerous. Yeah.
Yeah, but we thought, well, what the hell? We've come all this way, take a chance, because if we lose the passport, we can always go to the consulate and throw ourselves on their mercy and see what happens. So anyway, 3 days later, we turned up. There he was. And he had the passports, and he gave us the passports, and we had the visas. So we were able to sail to Russia, where we were looked after by a man called Gennady Snetkov, who was a member of the party. And he took care of us, really. He made sure that we didn't kick over the traces or anything. And he looked after us day by day. We were there for 3 weeks. And
Wow.
but the best bit was when he went home at 5 o'clock. He knocked off at 5 o'clock and went off to wherever he went. And then all the members of the yacht club, the Central Yacht Club of Trade Unions, crawled out from under their stones and crowded on board the boat. We had some wild parties. The drinking, I have to say, was prodigious. You'd have been proud of the Russians. The vodka came in little half-litre bottles, and it had a cap on it like you used to get on a beer bottle. You know, you opened it with your bottle opener. And once the top was off, you couldn't put it back on again, which didn't matter because you always finished the bottle.
Oh, good grief.
It was incredible. But we did see the wonders of Russia, really, which is why we went. We saw the palaces and the art museums and things which were there in those days, although they were set up to impress the ignorant like us. And but the great thing was the spirit of the people, which was fascinating. They had no concept of private ownership. They
Really?
couldn't understand that we owned this 50-foot vessel. They thought I must be some sort of English milord,
Huh.
because they didn't own boats. The boats were all owned by the club, i.e. the party.
Oh,
And
okay.
if they behaved themselves, they were allowed to go sailing. And they could go 7 miles out and 7 miles back. That was it. If they went further than that, they were in real trouble. And nobody ever did a runner, as far as I know. They all came back, and they were checked out and checked in. And if you were really good and could sail a bit, you got to be a captain. Otherwise, you just sort of went sailing. But they all
Wow.
loved it. They absolutely loved to be on a boat, and they were fascinated by our boat, which was an interesting historic vessel, really. And as I say, we met artists, we met novelists, we met a Kirov ballerina, who was hitched up with this chap who wrote books and painted pictures. And his pictures were really depressing because they were all sort of gruesome and blokes with their heads under their arms and things. Really, really pretty alarming. But he looked a bit like Rasputin as well, this chap. Anyway, that was that. That was all ancient history, Paul. It was a long time ago. But it was nice to
Wow.
be up there this summer and see some of the places that we'd gone all those years ago when we were young. It
Well,
was great.
how different was it then, navigating with no electronics or, no modern electronics, compared to today? Because today you would have most of those rocks on your chart plotter,
Yeah, you do. And
and
it's
back then, you're dead reckoning,
yeah.
how are you avoiding all those rocks? I mean,
Well,
a lot of concentration, right?
you're using back bearings. You're taking transits on the edge of islands. When they're buoyed, that's good, because if you stick with the buoyed channels, it's not too bad. But if you get out of the buoyed channels, it starts to get really interesting. And we were obliged, for various reasons, to leave the buoyed channels, and then you're thrown on your own devices, really. But it's in those days we were all navigating traditionally because there was no GPS. And certainly no chart plotters. And we were quite good at it, Paul. I mean, we were
Mhm.
quite used to galloping around the English Channel in 3-knot tides and going on the North Brittany coast where the tide goes up and down 40 feet, and just knowing where you are by looking at the edge of an island and something else that's lining up with it, and making a correction for the fact that the tide's gone out 40 feet or has come in, and therefore it's moved the headland. And all these things were meat and drink to us in those days. Now we're just slaves to the system. We press a button and it tells us where we are, and we believe it. God help us. God help us. It's a great shame that we have utterly capitulated to these machines. It's like when I was making television a few years ago. I was with a TV crew, young people all, and we had to get to somewhere in far Wales to find this ship that we were going to be filming on, and they just hit the button on the sat nav, which told us where to go. And
Yeah.
by following this sat nav route, we failed to visit the town of Conwy, which is on the north coast, and was really a detour of 15 miles, no big deal. And it's the most wonderful place. It's got a completely intact set of medieval castle walls, the town's inside them, and it's got a proper castle with turrets, and it's just so atmospheric. And the tide roars in and the tide roars out, and it's just great. And they didn't even know it was there because they didn't have a proper map. They were just going where the thing told them. And I'm afraid it's getting a bit like that at sea. I'm quite saddened by it, really. But it is very easy now navigating up here. Everybody's got a chart plotter.
Yeah.
They always have the chart plotter in the cockpit, which I will not do because I want to look at the sea when I'm out there. I want to look at the sky and the birds and the run of the sea.
Me too.
See what's going on. I don't want to sit there with a screen in front of me. What's that all about? What a sadness to lose all that.
Tom, I've got somebody knocking on the outside.
Oh, you better go. Yeah,
I've got to step out for just like 60 seconds max. I'll be right back.
Yeah, off you go.
All right, that was Archimedes selling pipas, coconuts. My coconut guy.
Oh,
yeah.
That's nice. Where are you then?
Bocas del Toro, Panama.
Oh, really? Gosh, and you got a coconut man.
Yeah. I'm there's a lot of indigenous people around here, and he's one of them, and he sells. They paddle around in dugout canoes, and this guy comes by about once a week and sells coconuts.
Well, I'm glad that's still going on. That's really good.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we used to get a lot of that way back when. It's sort of lost its edge in the Caribbean, in the Eastern Caribbean, hasn't it? It's all got a bit commercial there. It sort of still goes on a bit, but it's not like it was.
Yeah, this place is very unique. This coast is populated by the Nyabe Indians. They call themselves Indians. I know that word's out of fashion now, but they still use it here. And they still live very simply and own most of the land, and paddle around in dugout canoes and fish and eat fruit, and sell, occasionally sell things to us. Empanadas, bread, pipas. Pipas are the young coconuts that you drink. But anyway, yeah, it's like stepping back in time sometimes. There's a lot of places you can sail to around here where it's their community and their land, and you're amongst them, and it's definitely like going back in time. Yeah.
Good for you.
Very interesting.
Good for you for finding it and enjoying it.
Oh, I love it here. Yeah. Well, let's see. We were just talking about.
We're talking about the differences with the difference the plotter has made to a place like this.
Yeah.
A lot of people are out there sailing now who would not have been before, quite clearly.
Sure. Yeah.
And the plotter, you can just drive along really with the plotter in front of you, and if you keep your wits about you, you should be okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you still use traditional navigation, or do you just use electronic?
No, around here, I'm like everybody else. I navigate on the plotter. If I need close inshore work, and it's very close, rock to rock, I get my iPad out and have that in the cockpit with me. I always have a paper chart on the go, because the thing is, if you're using a plotter, the screen's small, you have these zooming and panning issues, and you can't see the big picture.
Yeah.
With the paper chart, you can, and the paper charts are quite good, but the scale's quite tight, so you have to look at them with a magnifying glass very often to get the detail you need. But it's all there. And in Denmark, for political reasons involving the Danish charting authorities, they're not keen on giving out their data. And I have a main plotter in my chart table, which uses shove-in cards, what do you call them? The things you put in your camera.
Yeah, SIM cards.
No.
SIM card? No.
No, it's like a camera card,
Mhm.
not a phone card. And all the data's, you've got them on your
Yeah,
plot.
I
You
know what you're
push it.
talking about.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. Well, you buy one of them and you've got Denmark. But if you download the charts for your iPad, you don't get Denmark for
Oh.
some reason. I have not found a decent electronic chart of Denmark, except by buying the paper charts that are put out by a German guy called Delius Clausing. And you get a download code from him, and you poke that into the internet, and then your iPad suddenly has got raster charts
Oh.
for the whole of the area, and they're all right, but they're no better than the paper charts, which, as I say, the scale very often becomes an issue. So so there it is. That's what you do. In the old days, when you were navigating entirely on paper, the problem was knowing where you were, because it's wall-to-wall islands, and it's once you get up the Swedish coast, and it's one after another, and they all look the same. They're all quite low, and they got trees on them and stuff, and perhaps a little house or two, nice painted red, beautiful little houses, wooden, and you don't know where you are after a couple of hours. So what you did when you bought the charts, they sold you this little stick-on red thing with an arrow on it, and when you got a fix, like you absolutely knew where you were at some point, you stuck this thing on the chart, and if you were really smart, you got your 2B pencil and wrote a time against it, and then you pressed on into the wilderness, and at least you could refer back to where you were. It was really like having a logbook. The only thing was that you had the chart, and there you were. You had it immediately. You couldn't be plotting fixes and things because everything was happening so fast. Even if you're only doing 4 knots, it's just one thing after another. Very complicated, very demanding piloting. But
Yeah.
great fun and really satisfying, and everywhere there's an anchorage that you
Yeah.
can find.
I imagine one of the main differences would be that now we are not paying as much attention, so we're doing other things, maybe reading a book or chatting with each other, relaxing. Whereas back then you were probably a lot more involved in the navigating, looking around, watching, taking bearings, keeping
You
your eye
were.
on the water.
I mean, moving away from this extreme situation where we are here, Baltic navigation in the islands is, I don't suppose it's unique, but I've never seen anything like it in my life, for complexity and demanding. But if you're in a sort of relatively normal place where you're navigating along a coast and there's the odd rock and island and lighthouse and stuff, yeah, you're right. In the old days, you had to keep tabs on things. You'd want an hourly position on the log in your logbook, or you're a mug if you don't do that. Anybody who doesn't do that's a mug, especially if they're navigating on electronic charts. Because if it all goes tits up and you haven't got a position in your logbook, you're stuffed, aren't you? You know where you are.
Right.
You are, man is lost. But if you know exactly where you were an hour ago, then all you got to do is whip
Yeah.
out your paper chart, course steer, distance run, bit of an adjustment for the tide if there is any, bang, there's your estimated position. Carry on from there, as we always did, no worries at all. But if you haven't been running your logbook, well, tough on you, mate. I'll see you in heaven. And that's it. So you ran your logbook, but of course, to put the position on the chart, the least you would have to do was run an EP. So you'd have to plot course steered, distance run, and an offset for any tide and leeway. And put a little triangle on the chart, bop time on it, relate the time to the logbook, write that down. That's you for the next hour. And anybody who didn't do that wanted shooting, really. They were just asking for trouble. And that's what we did. And if you could get a fix, if a fix offered itself, so much the better. You'd take a fix, relate that to the EP, make a judgment of which you were going to believe, and on you went. It was great. And of course, on the ocean, you were navigating with the day's work as a celestial navigator.
Yeah.
Which kept you busy.
Is there a different feeling, emotion from making a landfall from celestial navigation compared to making a landfall now with modern electronics?
Yeah, well, I've done both, and I mean, I'm so mature that I date from the time when there was no GPS. Today, people I'm an examiner for the government system in the UK, and so I get people coming along and say, "Oh, here I am. Here are my sites. I've done my stuff. Can I be, please, an ocean yacht master?" And all you have to do is just move the goalpost a little bit, and they can't do it because they don't really understand it. And that's no good at all. That won't do. So before we had GPS, all you had was the stars of heaven and distance run and your compass, and that was it. And to set out from, well, as we once did in the early 70s, we set out from England, my wife and I, in a boat that was built in 1903 as a pilot boat in Norway. Effectively, it had no engine. It did have one, but it never ever worked, so it was effectively engineless. And all we had was astro navigation. After we left the Canary Islands, the first thing we saw was Salvador in northeastern Brazil, and that was, I think, it was one of the biggest thrills of our lives. You know, to see the coast come up where you expect it after you've seen nothing for a whole month, and you've crossed the line, you've switched your calculations for your latitude because you're now in South. All these things you've done, and you've followed your books. You've referred to the nautical almanac every day. You've plotted the changing position of Venus, and one day there it comes out of nowhere, just where you expect it. And it is a wonderful thing. And we never got fed up with it. I remember going down to the islands from Beaufort, North Carolina, which many, many people have done before and after. It's a popular trip. But our landfall was on the lighthouse of Sombrero, which is northwest of Anguilla. We were going into Anguilla. And up it popped. And we've been at sea for, I don't know, 2 weeks. We'd had the misfortune of sailing through Hurricane Klaus, actually, which hit us just after we'd passed the Gulf Stream. That wasn't very nice. We had a bit of a time of it, but we were in a 1911 pilot cutter, so we were safe. I wouldn't have wanted to do it in a modern yacht with a flat floor and a fin keel. God help those guys. But the pilot cutter looked after us. We were fine.
What was your heavy weather technique, if I might interrupt for just a second?
Well, interesting. In that boat, I don't think probably the wind got up much above 60 knots, which is, you can't stand up in that. If it gets over 50, unless you've got an anemometer that goes over that speed, nobody knows how hard it's blowing, really, because you know yourself, Paul, when it gets really windy and you can't stand on deck anymore, you can't calculate it. You just have to write bloody windy in the logbook, because you can't say 75 knots or something. You just, anyway, in those conditions with that vessel, we had good sails, and the best bet was to heave to with double reefed staysail and storm trysail, and that helm lash down. And that sort of boat in those conditions will lie to with the wind between 35 and 50 degrees on the bow. So you're taking the wind on the shoulder. You're taking the seas on the shoulder, which is just where you don't want them. You don't want them dead ahead because they'll push you all over the place. Take it on the shoulder. You're leaving a slick behind where you're drifting, and it works really well. But you can't do that with a modern yacht because the head blows off. You beam on, and then you're dead meat, aren't you? You beam on to the breaking sea, and that is absolutely what you do not want to be, because that will knock anything over with big seas like that. But if you can take it on your shoulder, you're in good shape. In other boats, we'd run before it and one thing and another. But with those boats, with the pilot cutters, the best bet, until he couldn't carry canvas anymore, was to heave to.
Mm-hmm. Is that one reason why you have always had long keel boats?
Yeah, it is really. We know that when the time comes, and we are, because we're sailing two up a lot of the time. In the pilot cutter, we're not. We had more people on there because that was a big boat, heavy boat, 35 tons. And big sails, so you needed some people because there's no winches, of course, on these boats. So they are interesting to sail. But there's the two of us mostly, and when we're exhausted, which we know we will be, and now we're getting older, it's going to happen sooner than it used to. We need a boat that will look after us. We can't have a boat that we have to look after. And if you have a boat with a fin keel and a flat floor and a spade rudder, that boat will not look after you. you'll have to look after her. And if you do, and you handle yourself right, and you've got the right stuff, you should be okay. But you will have to, you can't leave her to it, because if you leave her to it and she ends up beam on, she's going to fall over. And if you fall over, you're in the hands of God. You might get lucky, or you might not. But these boats managed without falling over. With the pilot cutter, with the Norwegian boat coming home across the North Atlantic from Nova Scotia to Ireland, very late in the year, we copped a big gale, 40-foot seas, and again, wind that you couldn't write anything vulgar in the logbook, because it's just not gentlemanly, is it, to write it's blowing that hard. It's totally windy. And at that point, that boat could no longer carry canvas. It was just too much. And so we ran for a while under bare poles until we were completely exhausted. And then we left her to her own devices and just let her lie hull. And she was never knocked over. She got a hell of a hammering, and everything's flying around in the cabin and all this stuff that you read about, dividers flying past you, embedding themselves in the bulkhead and all that. But she didn't get knocked flat. The mast never went in the water. And the reason for that is, if you want to know why this happens or doesn't happen to boats like that, and why they were never lost at sea, you need to read Olin Stevens' chapter on this sort of thing in The Offshore Yacht, which was published by the Cruising Club of America shortly after the 1979 Fastnet disaster. And Olin Stevens explains that the GZ curve, the normal static stability curve, which everybody looks at and thinks, oh, well, I'm probably all right with that, doesn't really work at sea. Because at sea, you're not being knocked over by some giant who very gently takes the mast and leans the boat over until finally she reaches the angle of vanishing stability with the mast long gone in the water. No, you're knocked over by a wave which picks you up and wallops you. If you have a lightweight mast, Olin Stevens tells us, there's no inertia to resist the rolling. But if you have a heavy mast, like these gaff cutters had, when a wave hits you, there's a tremendous moment of inertia resisting the roll. The boat starts to roll in the end. And of course, if she rolls all the way over, the mast will be an incubus. It's not what you want. But the fact of the matter is that these things are dynamic, and the mast saves you. The weight of the mast saves you with all those heavy blocks up there. It is called roll moment of inertia, and it doesn't appear in most of the calculations. But if you want to know about it, read Olin Stevens, because he's a better man than me. He's gone now, God bless him. I hope he's got a fair wind wherever he is, because he designed some great boats.
Yeah, I've heard sailors debating that issue of heavy mast versus light mast, and that's a very interesting
read
point.
Olin Stevens and don't argue anymore.
Yes.
And compare my life experience, which has been that it works.
Well, no, from a strictly physics point of view, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah,
and out there when it's cuts rough. I mean, I don't do that anymore. I'm sailing coastal now because I'm getting on, and I don't want any more unpleasantness. I'm not planning on crossing any more oceans. For the last 15 years, the only time I've done it, if somebody pays me, I'm not interested in doing it for my own amusement anymore. And because we had plenty of that in the old days, and that's enough. So now we keep out of trouble. And we have a Mason 44 now, which is a good American cruising yacht, and it's pretty good, really, and it will heave to. It will heave to and point up if you get your sail balance right. So that's a real good reason for having a Mason 44.
Yeah, the Mason 44, that's exactly what I was going to ask you about next. Does it also have a full keel?
Yes. Oh, yeah. It's it looks, do you know what a folk boat is?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, it looks like a folk boat when it's out of the water, except it doesn't have a transom stern. It has a nice, neat little counter stern. And but the rudder is on the back of the keel.
Okay. And is it a cutter?
It is. Well, it's what you might call a slutter, really. It's got a masthead forestay and an inner forestay with a staysail on it. And for me, at my time of life, that's great. Because to be honest, I'm not that interested in short tacking with a great big genoa and winding till my eyes stick out every time I go about up a narrow channel. If we have to do that, we do it with the staysail. And you can wind that in with one hand, so that's easy. You don't go very fast, but you get there.
That's exactly what I do.
Right. But the great, well, you're a young fella, you know, so that's good. That makes me feel a bit better, Paul. Thank you.
Oh,
But
sure. Yeah.
the
I'll make it
reason why
hard.
I love the rig is that we've got both head sails are on rollers, and when it gets windy and we just, you know, the Genoas are so powerful, aren't they? And the boat's ramming along and crashing along. Oh God, I don't think I want this anymore. If the wind's well forward of the beam, we just roll it up, reef the main, and unroll the staysail, and off you go. Because we don't generally sail with them both at once. We might occasionally, but mostly not. It doesn't really help.
Hmm.
But if you can just unroll that staysail, you've got a beautifully shaped sail, set a bit in, balances the reef main nicely, and off you go, right up to
Yeah.
gale force. Lovely.
That's exactly how I sail upwind with the staysail and one reef in the main. Unless
Yeah,
it's very light winds and I'm sailing with the Genoa in the full main, but
yeah. We have a,
anything up into the teens, I'm staysail and one reef in the main, going upwind.
well, I'm glad it's not only me, Paul. That's good. And we
No,
have we
I
have
like it to be easy. I'm not racing. I just want it to be fun. I'm
absolutely,
out there to have a good time.
absolutely. We have a Code Zero head sail as well,
Oh, nice.
which is on a top-down furler, and that's magnificent because the Mason is not a ball of fire in less than 10 knots apparent wind. It goes all right, but it's fairly gentle. And for my sins years ago, I used to drive race boats, and I do like to see a boat that moves along. And the Code Zero has transformed the boat. You wouldn't believe it. You unroll that and just off you go. We used it so much this summer up in the islands when the wind did go light for a while. For day after day, we just used the Code Zero. It's so much easier to handle than the Genoa.
Hmm.
It's dead easy to stow because it's got this wonderful modern top-down furler. Dead easy. There's no heaving and grunting and putting the furling line on a winch because you can't manage. All that's just history. You just go up there and grab the lines and it's gone. Fantastic.
Wow.
Nothing like technology. I love it. I love that sail.
Yeah, yeah. Well, speaking of modern things, hypothetically speaking, if you were to lose your boat and
Yeah,
somebody said, "I'll buy you a boat, whatever you want," what would you choose? You ever thought about that?
yeah, I have. Um, for what I'm doing now in the islands, in the Baltic, if that's where I'm going to spend the rest of my days, because it may well be, because I love it. It's just so nice up here. The towns are lovely. The sailing's great. A lot of the time you're in flat water when you're in the islands, and so it's idyllic if you get it right. There's a bit of a grunt getting up to the islands, but given that, I would probably have one of these Scandinavian, what I call a whizzer. They just sail through the eye of a needle. They're fantastic sailing boats, and they have self-acting head sails. So if you want to tack up a channel, you just put the helm down and off you go. And they sail so well. Big main, modest jib, and they're wonderful. They're a little bit, by comparison with our boat, they're a bit pokey down below, and they don't have very big fuel tanks, which is bad news because I use a lot of fuel now, and I really enjoy my 150-gallon tanks. It's great. Fill and
Wow.
forget. Fill and forget. Mason, great boat. Fill and forget. I've got a 50 horse diesel. It'll do 6 knots at 2.7 liters an hour. I can motor if I want to, which I don't. But if I did, I could motor from the south coast of England to Norway and back on a tank of fuel.
Wow. Well,
And I would miss that with the boat that
yeah,
you're asking me to commission. But if I
yeah.
got that and I had my wife design the accommodation, because she is brilliant. She's lived through all this, and she's absolutely brilliant with accommodation. She'd get that right, and I'd get the sailing side of it right. I'd rig it as we have this rigged with a leisure furl in boom reefing system, so that we don't have to go on deck to handle the mainsail. Brilliant.
Hmm.
It's a lovely sail. It's got a big roach, full battens, lovely big strong vang. You can tweak it and twist it and make it do everything you want. And I'd have that again. And I think I'd quite enjoy that. It'd be great sailing in the islands with one of those boats and pass everybody.
Yeah. Is there a manufacturer that makes those? Can you give us an example of?
Yeah, there's a firm up north of Stockholm called Linjet. Well, we would pronounce it. It's called Linjet or something. It's Linjet,
Uh-huh.
and they are beautifully built boats. Beautifully built boats. Scandinavian standard, sort of Halberg Grassy standard, and but they're quick and they're beautifully finished. And we met the girl who does the varnish.
Hmm.
and spent an evening with her on her boat. And
Hmm.
it was I tell you what, you get to meet a real craftsman like that, and it puts you in your place. The finish on those boats is just fantastic. And
Nice.
some people are commissioning them now with electric engines because they sail so well. And they're not going great distances. They're not like me coming from the south coast of Denmark to Stockholm, which is, I don't know, 700 miles before you even start. They don't do that. They just come out of the yard and go for a sail 20, 30, 40 miles. And they make sure if there's not going to be any wind that they're within battery range of home.
Yeah. Yeah, that
Then
makes
they
sense.
go home and plug it in, job done.
Plug it back in. Yeah.
Like
Interesting.
everything else, yeah, I think I'd do that if I had to design a new boat for myself. But if I wanted to sail the seas generically with all sorts of things, all sorts of different seas, and not knowing quite what I was going to find, I think I'd probably go with this. I like this boat. We get on really
All
well
right.
with it. It's a good choice.
All
I
right.
wouldn't choose it for the Southern Ocean because I don't think the cockpit's safe enough. But it's great for everything else.
I bet. All right. You've written maybe 30 books, and I think they've all been, correct me if
Yeah.
I'm wrong, have they all been nonfiction
No,
so
they have.
far?
Well, yeah, they have all been non-fiction. Yeah, but
And you're writing a,
I've written a couple of travel books. But I've done a novel. It's done. It's being
yes.
published as we speak.
Yes. Tell us about it. What's the
Well,
title?
it's called Hurricane Force.
Hurricane Force.
Hurricane Force, and it's uh, well, it's all about a chap. The usual thing, it's a thriller, really, and it's like most of these books. It's about a chap who's down on his luck. The world has not been kind to him. He's a merchant navy officer, and the British merchant fleet just died on its feet in the 1970s, which is when the book is dated. That's where it's happening. That's where the action is, and he's on the beach really, and his wife's been misbehaving, and life doesn't hold much really. So he buys himself a fishing boat and converts it into a yacht. It's a proper sailing fishing boat, a 1900s proper thing, pre-engine. Um, it's got an engine now, and he sails away to the westward to see what life's going to bring to him. Really, just to seek his fortune. The loose plan is to go to New Zealand. He hits a container in mid-Atlantic, gets badly damaged, has to save the ship, and then he takes it into an island in the Caribbean, in the Eastern Caribbean, to get fixed up. And once he's there, all is not as it appears, and he gets involved with bad guys and who are chasing him, and all sorts of things happen. But it ends up with a horrible dilemma that he's in a situation that he has to let a lot of nice people down, or he's going to get very dead because of the baddies, and he can't tell the nice people that
Mm.
the reason why he appears to be dumping on them from a great height is because he'll be very dead, and it's quite likely they will be too. So, pursued by the hate of the people he loves, he has to go and do this terrible thing. But while he's doing it, he finds a way of dealing out the forces of darkness. So it's and he's helped out by a hurricane,
All right.
and he's a proper seaman, and he knows what to do, and
Hmm.
it all. So it's a good read. It's I think people enjoy it. The people who've read it so far have loved it. So I'm really looking forward to launching it in about a month's time.
Excellent. Was it fun to write?
Funnily enough, I first wrote it 40 years ago.
Oh, no
Um,
way.
yeah, well, I didn't have, in those days I'd sort of come back from sea, and we had a baby and one thing and another, and we were wondering what we were going to do for money, and I'd got a bit of a job. It wasn't a job, but I was freelancing, but I had some work with Yachting Monthly, and that was bringing in some money, and I was doing some yacht delivery and some teaching and examining, but it wasn't enough. And I thought, well, what I'll do, I'll write a novel. I can do that. I'm a good writer because I write easily. It comes naturally to me. I come from a long line of preachers and lawyers, and so it's in my blood, words. And I sat down, and Ros and I plotted out this quite complicated plot, and I wrote a novel. And I looked at it when I was finished, and I wasn't a good enough writer 40 years ago. It read like some person who didn't have enough to do, who'd never written anything, and they thought, oh, I'll write a book. Anybody can write a book, and it just didn't read well enough. And at the time, I could see that, So I didn't actually dare offer it up for publication. I just sat on it. And I thought maybe I'll sort this out one day, and I never did. And I forgot all about it. And last winter, I was writing a memoir about my early days at sea, which were very colourful. All sorts of things happened in very interesting vessels. And I got blocked. Now, Paul, you're a writer. You know how it is for the likes of you and me. We write for money, don't we? We don't write for love. And you can't afford to get writer's block. Only amateurs get writer's block, not professionals. But I got writer's block. I thought, I can't believe this. What am I going to do? And I started looking at all sorts of things, that anything but face up to this book, you know. So, and then Ros said, my wife Ros, she said, well, why don't you have a look at the old novel? I said, nah. She said, well, I'll see if I can find it. And she dug in all these drawers and things. She came out with it. There it was, typed out on paper. And I had a read of it, and I read through. I said, well, this isn't half bad. I could make this work because I can write now. And she agreed. She was enthusiastic. And so basically I rewrote it. And but the plot's the same, more or less. Needed a bit of tidying up, but it was a bit immature. And it was extremely non-correct. You'd never get it published today. For all sorts of reasons, but anyway, we've sorted all that out, and it's good now, and it's lovely, and I'm pleased with it. So, having rewritten it, I have a number of publishers who would certainly have published it, because I've got publishers coming out of my ears really because of my other books, and a lot of them do fiction books, and I'm sure it would have been okay. But I'm fed up with it really, because it takes years to get published, and there's a lot of messing about, and in the end, you get 3/5 of 5/8 of nothing in the way of royalties since the collapse of the net book agreement. So I thought I'd publish it myself. So actually, I've got a young lady who helps you through this process, and she's brilliant, and she's doing it for me. Really, it's going to probably come out through Amazon, and that's it. I'll be able to sell my own book and make some money. And if it sells through Amazon, I'll probably still get 3/5 of 5/8 of nothing. But the ones I sell myself, which will be considerable, because I sell books off the website all the time, we'll make some money on that, and that'll be great. And I'll enjoy it, and I will really get a bang out of people enjoying my novel. So that's where it stands, Paul.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, Hurricane Force. I look forward to reading it, and I will. When it comes out, I'll put a link somewhere. I'll find a place on the website to put a link.
Thank you. So. That's great, because I would love to get it into the States, because I do have a modest following in the States. I have an internet club called the Sea Chest, and we have members all over the world, and we got a lot of American members, and they follow me in Sail Magazine, where I have a monthly column, amongst other things, and they're buying my books, and so I think that I'm hoping that we'll be able to sell it in the States, because your market is so huge compared with ours.
It's a big market. Yeah, definitely. Well, I'll tell you what, I'll read the book and we can have another conversation and talk about the book.
That would be great, because
then I'll have a new episode on the podcast show notes page to put the link on.
Lovely. That'd be great, because it's a lot of it's based on experiences that I had back in the 1970s.
I'm sure. Yeah, that's how novels are, aren't they? Yeah. Wonderful.
I'm afraid they are. Yeah, you've written one yourself, haven't you?
I've published 3 novels, and
gosh, well done.
Yeah, and I'm working on a nautical thriller right now. That's already written. I'm just going through and improving it. I'm editing it.
Yeah, it's a big process, isn't it?
Yeah, I've been working on this one on and off for about 3 years.
Yeah,
so yeah, it takes a year of full-time work for me to finish a book, and if I'm working on multiple projects, it might take 2, might take 3 years.
Yeah,
that's just the way it is. There's no rush. It's got to be.
Well, you have to be right. So meticulous about who's where and who's done what and who said what and when they said it and all the rest of it. It's amazing how complex it is. I've found it a bit of a revelation, actually, Paul, doing it myself.
It's a lot harder than writing a nonfiction, isn't it? Well, I think it is.
It really is. Yeah, it's a different world.
Yeah, for sure. All right, and you've got a website, tomcunliffe.com.
Yeah,
with all sorts of different pages on it. You do consulting and training. You've got a bookstore on there. What am I missing?
What am I missing? Well, I do a lot of public speaking. I do a lot of lecturing in the UK and also in Europe. I've been to Norway, Holland, all over the place lecturing. I've been to Sweden as well to lecture. So yeah, that features. I also do legal opinions. I'm not a lawyer, although I did read law at university before I ran away to sea. But that enables me to sort of get to the guts of a problem, really. I don't really know much about the law anymore, but the training has helped me to get to what really makes something tick. And so I do a lot of assistance in legal matters. I get hauled in as an expert witness to tell the judge who's talking rubbish and who might be right.
Is that all related to sailing?
Yes, always about sailing, because I couldn't consider myself an expert in anything else. But I enjoy doing the sailing stuff. It's fascinating. Really, really interesting. It's quite high stress sometimes too, when you get taken apart by a hostile barrister. Yeah.
Oh, I bet. I'm remembering, Lord Jim, the novel Lord Jim. That was the beginning of that book was a very difficult trial for poor Jim. And,
that's right.
Probably expert witnesses in there like yourself.
Yeah, that's right. It's a funny thing. Yeah, I was involved in a trial in New York City many years ago, where my boat had been damaged by somebody, and he said he would pay for the repairs. The repairs were done, and then he changed his mind. So I had no money. So we sued him with a no fee, no cure, no fee lawyer, who was an excellent young man from Manhattan, and we won the case. And it was high stress, because you're up there. We walked up those long steps to the courthouse in Manhattan, and you go in there, and the judge comes in, all stand and all the rest of it. And my father was a lawyer, and he said that I had to wear a nice clean shirt and a tie, and I had to trim my moustache. He said.
I know. I keep one tie in my stand-up locker here, just in case.
Well done. I hope it's a club tie, because they're very good for tying up your trousers and also for starting seagull outboards.
Multiple purpose. Everything has to have multiple purposes.
That's it. Yeah.
Well, Tom, I know you've got places to go and things to do. It has been truly has been an honor meeting you, and it's been a great time talking to you. I look forward to doing it again after I've read your book, Hurricane Force.
Very much so, Paul. And I've really enjoyed talking with you too. It's great to meet you at last. Thanks a lot.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.